Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to you all. From those down the road to the folks around the world. Welcome back to another Wednesday weekly video. Now, the recent shanty talk trend that has dominated social media in the last few days and few weeks has created a phenomenon where sea shanties are becoming an increasingly popular genre of music. So I'm going to springboard off of that trend and impart on where we get sea shanties, how they came to be, and maybe even discussing a couple of very popular ones, shall we say. So, bring your Wellerman, figure out what you're going to do with your Drunken Sailor, and haul away, Joe, because this is the video. So what is a sea shanty? Well, at its glaringly obvious, it is a song that is sung at sea. Shanty comes from the French word chanty, spelled C-H-A-N-T-Y, which means to sing. So again, glaringly obvious, to sing at sea. The shanty genre of music came about during the golden age of sailing, which is a period from the early 18th century right up until the mid-19th century. And by that point you have the trend of steamships. Now, the golden age of sailing was when ships were at their biggest, at their most efficient, and at their most dominant across the globe's seas. Once you get steamers, however, by the mid-19th century, sea shanties begin to die out, and by the early 20th century, people just aren't singing sea shanties anymore. But of course, in recent decades, people have recorded numerous versions of shanty songs, and of course it has become popular once again with the shanty talk trend. Shanties weren't just songs that you could sing with joy on the top of the deck of a ship, nor were they really for forgetting about the woes of navy life or the maritime life. Shanties were about efficiency and task purpose. Each shanty had its own little subgenre, breaking up the monotony of certain tasks. Each of the shanties have a very sort of monochromatic way of being. Subgenres including marching shanties, where perhaps you would be marching from one end of a large ship to the other with a large hauling rope. Drag shanties were about breaking up sort of the monotonous tasks, maybe hauling up a large rope or pulling an anchor. They each had purpose. You could sing these shanties without any professional training. These were just ordinary people. It was a very call and response type song. A shantyman would often be called upon who had good lyric wit and a good tone of voice to call out the first verse of the shanty, and then the rest of the crew in their particular tasks would respond with the chorus. Shanties didn't require any musical instruments. Despite popular adaptations and interpretations using perhaps either a band or musical melodic instruments, shanties at that time didn't necessarily need this musical accompaniment. This is very much in contrast to the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy didn't like people singing sea shanties. They had their own sea songs, which would be sung off duty and below decks, usually with an accompanying flute or other small musical instruments. So again, sea shanties aren't about the joys of living on a ship, but about passing the time and making your job and your task at hand more efficient and less of a grueling task. Now, the issues with shanties, which I will sort of come onto in the examples I'm about to give, is that shanties were rarely standardised. There was no real writing of these shanties until later in the 19th century, because each crew, each ship, each region, even different nationalities had their own sea shanties. Some shanties obviously transcend language or had their own sort of adapted language features depending on the song, but it wasn't a standardized thing. And it's only been, as I said, in recent years and during the 20th century, when they were compiled together in numerous folk song and other sort of shanty song catalogues, that proper lyrics and standardized lyrics were given, and each of the songs were classified as, well, what it is. Now, the first example I want to talk about is the Wellerman, or, as it is fully known, Soon May the Wellerman Come. Now, this song describes the whaling vessel, the Billy O.T., as it struggles, verse by chorus, to try and capture a whale, a highly prized animal in the 19th century. This song was written in 1860 to 1870, but it references things that are just a little bit earlier, from the 1830s. Now, in order to explain why, we have to first ask, what is a Wellerman? Well, a Wellerman references the Weller Company, a company that worked out of New Zealand and started up by 3 English brothers who had emigrated to Sydney, Australia, and then set up their business out of modern-day Dunedin. Dunedin wasn't a settlement at this point, but it is the closest modern-day sort of pinpoint reference that we could find. The Wellerman, or the Weller Company, would send out whaling vessels into the Pacific Ocean. They would capture the said whales, bring them back in exchange for lucrative items. Hence why there is the lyric, to bring us sugar, tea and rum. These were still very highly prized and very expensive items in the 19th century. We often associate these items with sort of piracy and to capture the booty, and that's what those items would be. But it took a very long time for those items to become cheap and easily distributable across the world. The whaling industry in New Zealand began with this with the Weller Company and lasted until the 1960s, but the actual company itself didn't last more than 10 years, shutting up shop in 1841. So while the song may have been written on ink and paper in 1860 to 70, it might have had a version or an oral adaptation from a lot earlier. Now, the second of my 2 examples is Drunken Sailor, or what do we do with a drunken sailor? This song is a marching song, a marching shanty. Big vessels would use this as a means to hauling large ropes across the deck to and fro. By comparison, the Wellerman is a sort of monotonous task song, which obviously I mentioned previously. The origins of Drunken Sailor come from 1839 Connecticut, although, like with the Wellerman, the song might have actually had an earlier version that wasn't necessarily put to pen and paper. It also has its origins in Irish folk songs. Some of the lyrics and some of the stylizing of Drunken Sailor can be found in particular Irish folk songs. Now, the song obviously details what you do with a drunken sailor. There are many versions of this song, there are many verses of this song, describing the different punishments or means of which to sober up a drunken sailor. 3 examples would be shaving his belly with a rusty razor, stick him in the bed with the captain's daughter, or you have put him in a longboat until he's sober. Some versions go through various means of extremity until you get to the ridiculous and the banal and the crazy. Other versions just go through the different means and ways of sobering up the said individual. In fact, Drunken Sailor is probably, well, up until recently, the most famous of the sea shanties. it traversed, it left its maritime sphere of influence and entered the land of the landlubbers. It has had many different recordings by many different groups and is most associated with this maritime sea shanty sphere, thing, genre. Obviously, as I said, up until most recently. Well, I certainly hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have also enjoyed the melodic, yet probably rustic interpretation of sea shanties, courtesy of my guitar playing. If you have liked what you've seen and what you've heard, then please do click the little like button and maybe even consider subscribing to the channel as well. It all helps me out incredibly. In fact, if you have anything you'd like to add to this video, maybe something I might have got slightly wrong or something I might have missed, then please do drop a comment in the bit below, whatever. All of my channel and social media stuff is down in the description, and there will be a playlist as well as some other recommended videos for you at the end just coming up. So without further ado, I'm going to leave it there. See you later.